Today, my guest is author Joseph Wambaugh, a former 14 years member of the Los Angeles Police Department. Joe has written 18 books, both fiction and nonfiction, created screenplays and a TV miniseries, and was creator and consultant of 2 television series. We will be talking to him about his new novel released this month from Little Brown and Company, Hollywood Moon, which is the 3rd in Joe's Hollywood series. Joe, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you for having me back, Jacqueline.
Well, that's the thing that is so exciting to me, and I know will be to my audience. You were my very first guest when I started my very first show, so it's appropriate that you're on again near the end of the year, and thanks so much for that.
Well, it's my pleasure.
Well, let's get to the questions. Hollywood has been referred to as, quote, America's nut capital, the setting for your series. Your first 2 books in the series are Hollywood Station and Hollywood Crows, and Hollywood Moon is a continuation of those novels. Let's begin in the beginning. Tell my listeners what the germ of the idea was that started this whole series, first leading you to Hollywood Station and bringing you back to the LA scene. How did that all begin?
Well, my friend and fellow author James Ellroy suggested that it was time for me to go back and write about the LAPD because he claimed that no one else can do it as well as I can with my experience. So I decided to do it, and I interviewed cops. I take them to dinner 3 or 4 at a time, buy them drinks. After I had about 50 cops interviewed, I knew it was time to start. Yes. I couldn't put it off any longer.
Well, that's good. So let's begin then. We're going to talk about those. We're going to talk about those police meetings that you had. But give us to begin with a brief overview of that story, just to then we'll lead into Hollywood Crows and then start talking about Hollywood Moon, just so my listeners know what it's all about.
Well, I hadn't specifically intended to write about Hollywood division of LAPD. I didn't know what I was going to write about, but the more cops I interviewed, the more interesting the Hollywood division cops came to be. Because Hollywood's a strange place to work. Hollywood Station is right in the heart of the city of Los Angeles, and a lot of very strange people live and work and hang out in Hollywood. So a lot of very interesting things happen there every day. And so I decided that I would write my comeback novel, Hollywood, which came to be called Hollywood Station, about that particular area. So that's how it started.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And as you said, there's a lot of very strange people in Hollywood, and that book is filled with strange and interesting characters, some of whom are you're very empathetic with, and others are just plain crazy, and we can't really like them too much, but you do a good job of telling that story. Now, did you know when you finished that book that you were going to go on and do a series? Did you know that there'd be at least a second book, or how did that all come about?
No, I didn't know, but after a couple of months of doing nothing, I knew it was time to start another novel, and I got the idea for Hollywood Crows because some of the cops that I interviewed were Crow officers. That's spelled CRO, Community Relations Office. That's the acronym. But the cops refer to them as the Crow Office or Crows.
Great title.
Yeah. So I got the idea to write about them because they deal with quality of life issues rather than with crime suppression. They deal with, homeless issues, graffiti issues, all sorts of things that the regular cops don't want to do or don't have the time to do. And I thought, well, this is kind of interesting, and so that's what got me into that story. But of course, there is a crime and murder involved in it. They're still police officers, after all.
Yeah. And I read one little aspect of the publicity release that describes, and of course I read the book quite some time ago, but I did read the book and enjoy it. But so there's a socialite involved that's stuck in the middle of an ugly divorce, a bar owner, 2 cops, and a small-time tweaker. Tell my audience what a tweaker is.
Well, tweakers are the methamphetamine addicts. And methamphetamine, as probably everyone knows, is a very dangerous drug, and it makes people very crazy. And it's a very popular drug now. It's rather easy to acquire. People make it in laboratories, and they sell it for less money than a lot of other drugs sell for. So it's causing a lot of damage to America, really, methamphetamine. Anyway, they're called tweakers.
Okay, that's you sometimes wonder, at least I do, how all of these little acronyms and short things get going. Who thinks up all of that stuff? Is that a cop a term also, do you think?
I don't know where it came from, but I think I have a general idea, because when they're on crystal meth, why they're tweaky, they're twitchy.
I see.
They can stay up all night taking a television apart and putting it back together again because they can't sleep. They've got to always be doing things, so the tweak kind of fits, you know.
Oh my, yeah, it's a very sad scene. That's for sure.
Oh yes.
So the second book, then, you in Hollywood Crows, as you said, it talks about the quality of life, and yet there is a murder in it, and there's other police in it, and so forth. How is that group, Crow, divided from the rest of the police that do cover the crime scenes and so forth? Are they all under the same umbrella, or does that work differently?
No, they're all under the umbrella of a Hollywood division. They work right across the parking lot from the main headquarters building at Hollywood Station. Right across the parking lot is a smaller city building, and they put the Crow's office in there. Mm-hmm. But yes, they still work under the captain at Hollywood Station, 2 captains actually, and they just have a very different sort of job. And
but they're still on the streets, these people that are in that group.
Yes, they are, but they're not patrolling, for crime suppression. They're taking care of myriad phone calls that come in from Hollywood people about an abandoned couch is left in my yard. How did it get there? What are you going to do about it? All that sort of thing.
My goodness.
And some of these seemingly innocuous little calls they get can turn into something quite interesting.
Yes. Now, how does Hollywood Moon, we want to get into your new book, and we'll be going back and forth, too, talking about this, because it is such an interesting series. So we want people to kind of read your books, but then go back and get these other 2 if they haven't already read them. So how does Hollywood Moon relate to the first books? Does it start off where the last began, or tell us about that?
Well, there are a few continuing characters from Hollywood Station in all 3 books, and a couple of those characters, namely Hollywood Nate Weiss, one of the characters from the first book to the second to the third, plays a more prominent role. They call him Hollywood Nate because there's always been someone at Los Angeles Police Department with Hollywood attached to his first name. Usually they're cops who either do a lot of technical advice on TV shows and movies, or cops who aspire to be actors, and maybe they're members of SAG, Screen Actors Guild. And there's always been a Hollywood Lou or a Hollywood Bill, and so my guy is Hollywood Nate.
And I liked him.
Yeah, he's a good character.
Yeah, he is.
Yes, he sort of insisted to be in all 3 books. I didn't have any plan to do it. It's just that I guess I liked him. He developed somehow almost on his own, and I had to feature him more in Hollywood Moon because he just sort of made me do it.
So what's the overview now on the story of Hollywood Moon without giving too much away, but give my listeners an idea of what it's all about?
Well, Hollywood Moon is about a few different stories that kind of dovetail. It looks almost as though you're reading independent stories, except they will come together. One of them involves a couple, identity thieves, who live in Hollywood on Franklin Avenue, and they're a married couple, and the woman is the brains, and her husband is the guy that goes out on the street and makes the contacts with thieves who steal mail for her, who steal identification out of lockers, who do all of the things that she, is a very accomplished identity thief with a number of computers in her apartment, is able to turn into a lot of money by stealing identity and creating checks from the identity, cashing the forged checks. And her husband is kind of her flunky. He's a failed actor and a failed screenwriter, of course, being in Hollywood.
Right.
Who isn't?
Right.
That's one story. Then there's another story about a strange young Hispanic boy, 19 years old, who has a streak of violence in him, and he's sort of borderline, I would say, a borderline psychotic. And it seems as though those stories could not relate, but yet they do, because he becomes one of the young men who are solicited to help with the identity scams. So all of this comes together and involves the cops, Hollywood Nate, his beautiful partner, Officer Dana Vaughn, and the surfer cops.
The surfer cops are great.
The surfer dudes who are called Flotsam and Jetsam by the other cops. And they talk surferese, and they hang out at Malibu in their off-duty hours. So all these people do, their stories do intertwine in Hollywood Moon. It's gotten great reviews so far. The LA Times really loved it.
Well, I enjoyed it. I have not, I've gone back several times because, as you said, the stories kind of lead one into the other. And I liked that. And I liked the fact that I said, gee, I've got to go back now and check this out a little more and read that part again. And I think the whole style of what you've done is really good, not only creating a good story, but it really does all come together just in quite a way. As one reviewer said, it's a series of twists, turns, and chases. So that's
not physical chases,
no.
but certainly psychological chases.
Exactly. By the way, did you notice that last night was a Hollywood Moon night?
I did. I did notice that. The Hollywood Moon, of course, is the full moon, and when it comes out over Hollywood, they say it brings out the beast rather than the best in the Hollywood citizenry. And all kinds of strange things happen in Hollywood under a full moon, or as they call it, a Hollywood moon.
So that's what also gave you the title.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Well, it was really something, because I did think about you in your book last night when I went out and saw that gorgeous moon. I thought, uh-oh, what's going on in Hollywood? So it's a fun thing. Let's talk some more about the dine and drinks, what you call the dine and drinks research sessions for the Hollywood series that you did with members of the police force. We talked about that way back when, but we've got lots of new listeners now that I'd like to have them hear some more about it. Tell us what you found with those.
Yes, I always segregate by gender. I'll either have 3 or 4 women at a dinner or 3 or 4 men, and never larger numbers than that, because then it turns into a big party and they're talking to each other instead of telling me stories. And the women in general are the best, because women in general are fearless talkers, and the men are more reticent and reluctant, and they're harder to draw out. I have to buy them a lot more drinks than I do the women. The women just have no fear, and they're unashamed to reveal powerful emotion without being prompted, whereas the guys are not necessarily. And they're just much more fun to take on these dine and drink evenings. And as I say, I have to do a lot of them. On all 3 books, I've had to do more than 50 police officers.
I'm going to have to,
constant.
excuse me, Joe, I'm going to have to interrupt you now. We have to take a little break, but remember
sure.
that last thing that you were saying, and this is the Jacqueline Bachar Show. And Joe, we were talking about the dine and drinks research that you were doing with the members of the police force, and you were about to say something more about it when I had to interrupt you. So go on with what you were saying.
Well, I was just saying that the women are more fun to be with. They're better talkers, and they reveal more, and they can reveal a lot, not just about themselves, but about men. They seem to have more intuitive, more insight into how everything works. And I don't mean how police procedural things work. I mean how people work. Mm-hmm. And that's what I'm interested in. So I can get an awful lot out of my dinners with the female cops.
Well, you have quite an obvious admiration for the men and women of the police department. I mean, having been one yourself, you had an inside view. But things are very different now. And so what are you... And when you read the book, it's obvious the problems that the men and women in the police force have to deal with, particularly in Hollywood. But what are some of the more difficult issues that they have to deal with that's different from when you were on the force?
Well, in Hollywood Station, of course, it dealt a lot with the federal consent decree that LAPD was under for several years because of the Rodney King affair and the so-called Rampart division scandal, and they had to work under that, and that involved hundreds and hundreds of cops making reports and auditing and watching over other cops, all kinds of overseeing going on. That just ended last summer. Mm-hmm. But so that is of course very different, and they're trying to make the cops more user-friendly, and a lot of emphasis on community involvement and all sorts of things that we didn't have to do when we were more interested in crime suppression back in my day.
Right.
But now it's got to be a lot more touchy-feely, and that's not necessarily easy for people who have to suppress crime on the one hand, and yet be careful not to hurt anybody's feelings on the other hand.
And not get hurt themselves.
So yeah. It's just not easy.
It has to be tough. That's for certain. Well, one critic in a New York Times book review a while back, Thomas Fleming, said about you that you do have the ability to evoke sympathy for crude and awful distasteful characters. But he goes on to say, let us dispel forever the notion that Mr. Wambaugh is only a former cop who happens to write books. This would be tantamount to saying that Jack London was first and foremost a sailor. Mr. Wambaugh is, in fact, a writer of genuine power, style, wit, and originality who has chosen to write about the police in particular as a means of expressing his views on society in general. That's quite a statement.
I love that review.
Yeah, I don't blame you. But I imagine that probably, look, you got your experience as a police officer. If you hadn't been a police officer, who knows whether you would be a writer today or you might be a writer and write different books. So we always want to mention the fact that is part of your background. But I agree with him. You've been writing long enough now that we can say, yeah, Joe Wambaugh is a writer who used to be a cop.
Yeah, rather than a cop who...
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Now, the Hollywood Moon book that we're talking about, in one of the chapters, actually it's a chapter near the end, if I can just mention a little statement here, Sergeant Murillo is beginning a roll call and telling people there is a real Hollywood moon tonight, and as you know, a full moon over Hollywood brings out the beast rather than the best in our citizens, as you said. And he says the car that comes back with the weirdest encounter of the night will get an extra large pizza with the works. I imagine that part is done a lot. Pizzas handed out.
Little morale builder, because on a night of a Hollywood moon, there are going to be some very weird stories coming back.
Yeah. Now, do you think that today's economic climate and the cutbacks in our security services are going to affect your thinking in a way to inspire you to write more about it or to write in a different way? Or do you feel that everything that you've had to say about the problems of police officers and so forth have already been said in this series?
Well, I try not to be didactic or editorialize. I just try to tell a story, a dramatic or a funny or an interesting story, and just let those peripheral issues, things like the budget you're talking about, or the oversight by the federal government that went on for several years there, all of that sort of thing, or the politics. And Los Angeles is rife with politics, of course.
Right.
All the things the politicians do to the cops constantly. I let those things come out naturally in the complaining, the griping that the cops do about all those things. But I don't let it stop the story or even slow down the story. The story's not about all that stuff. The story's about human things. It's about powerful things. It's about things that matter. And so all that other stuff is just peripheral. I'll never just dwell on that kind of thing.
Well, now what you've just said, and I agree with you on that, and it really is very significant to your story. So that has changed, that aspect of it, the political climate and all of that has changed in a different way from the time that you wrote your first two books, The New Centurions, about the 5 cops, that was published in 1971, and The Blue Knight, about a cop on the beat and the problems that he encountered in 1972. And yeah, that did establish your reputation as a powerful writer. So would you say that your writing has changed since that time in relation to what's going on today as opposed to your writing style or your writing ideas and so forth?
I think the style was established with the Choir Boys in 1975.
Right.
I think the style has stayed the same. But the police department has changed. The biggest change in the Los Angeles Police Department took place when Chief Darrell Gates retired, because he was the last chief to serve with civil service protection, the protection that all police officers have, except now the chief and certain high-ranking members of the department don't have that protection anymore. But prior to Gates' retirement, everybody had it, and then there was a charter amendment, I believe it was, that was passed that stripped the chief of police of his civil service protection, which means that you could no longer fire him except for cause. You could fire him for any reason if you're the mayor. The mayor could fire him just on a whim. He serves at the pleasure of the mayor, and he's no longer protected. Therefore, the police department had to become political from that date on. And I don't think it was a good thing. I think maybe they should have compromised and said, all right, we don't want to give that chief a lifelong position like the Pope, but maybe we should give him a 5-year contract. But during those 5 years, give him the civil service protection that he needs so that he can do a job and doesn't have to kowtow to everybody in City Hall.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, and there's still some problems, obviously, within the police department, not necessarily some of the things that you were encountering, but based on all of these rules and regulations that today's police have to deal with. How has women on the police force affected the police?
Well, I've always been a proponent of women on the police department. I worked with women when I was a cop, and in that, as I've said here, women are more verbal. They tend to be better communicators, and police work, if it's about anything, it's about talking to people, and they seem to do it better than the guys do in general. And so I think they've been a a marvelous addition to police work. They're out in the field now doing the same work the men are. Back in my day, they were detectives, and they were not necessarily working patrol the way they are now. So no, it's been great. However, there are some drawbacks when one relaxes, say the military, the kind of military police force that LAPD once was, and so effective at it. Because as it becomes a little bit more people-friendly and touchy-feely, they are letting some cops on the department now that they would never have let on the department back in my day. People can be convicted of a misdemeanor and sometimes even 2 misdemeanors and still become police officers. Back in my day, there was no way that would happen.
Well, I guess it's like some of the people that are in the actual military today too.
Right. Yeah.
Because of the need for it.
Yeah. The model for police officers has changed to be more accepting.
Yeah. Well, yes, that's throughout our society, isn't it? To be
yes,
more...
and then the Rampart scandal there was always a question connected with it. Were those 2 or 3 officers involved? Were they police officers who became gangsters, or were they gangsters who became police officers?
Talk a little bit about that scandal, because I'm sure there's a lot of listeners that don't remember it or don't know anything about it.
Yeah, the Rampart scandals, that's what brought the federal government down on the LAPD. And a couple officers, those who went to prison, they were rousting drug dealers, and they were stealing the drugs. They shot one wannabe gang member and paralyzed him for life, and then put a hideout gun on him and said that he tried to kill them. Things like that. I mean, terrible stuff. And they ended up going to prison, and then they started implicating other cops. But a lot of what they implicated turned out to be lies, and they were the only 2 that went to prison. One of their friends, though, also went to prison, and a cop for a bank robbery, $720,000. So those are the 3 bad guys. That $720,000 has never been recovered.
Wow.
There was a group of cops working with Death Row Records, Suge Knight and Death Row Records, and they were thick as thieves, some of them, and some of them were thieves.
And that permeated the system and the news for quite a long time, I remember.
Yeah, the news just loved that and jumped on it, and they were trying to claim that, it was a tip of the iceberg. Well, it was the iceberg. It wasn't the tip, because there were only those 3 guys that went to prison.
Yeah. Well, let's ask the big question. Is there going to be a 4th book in the series that will begin where Hollywood Moon left off? I know it's always tough to ask an author that question. Here we are, we're just celebrating the release of the book, and we already want to know what's next. But what is next? Do you know yet?
Well, I've interviewed 40 cops so far, so I can tell you there's another novel coming. I don't know if it'll be a 4th in the Hollywood series, to make it a quartet, or if it'll be something else entirely. I don't know. Until I start writing, I'm that kind of a writer. I don't do outlines. The story just sort of has to tell me what it wants to do. And
have you started writing?
No. I hope to start next week.
Well, good. Okay. Well, that means we've got to have you back when it's your next book. And as I said earlier, and I will say again, this Hollywood Moon is getting very good reaction and very good response, and they're saying it's the best in the trio. How does an author feel about that when there's been 2 other books before it, and then they say, well, this one is the best? Do you agree with that? And if you do, why?
No, I didn't agree with it. I thought Hollywood Station was the best, but that's what so many critics are saying, including Stephen King.
Yeah.
And I've always respected him as a critic.
Well, it is interesting. I suppose everybody has their favorite book and even a reviewer. So the one last question I think that I want to ask you. You've got many fans here in the Valley and, of course, around the world, and everyone thinks they know you pretty well, especially here in the Valley, because we're proud to have you as a resident from time to time. But why don't you tell us something about you that we don't know or would surprise us?
I can't imagine what that would be.
Well, are you a closet cook or something like
No,
that?
no,
Nothing like that.
I can't do anything except tell stories. And but my wife's an awfully good cook, and we do live there in Rancho Mirage. We have a home there and a home in San Diego, so she's there all the time. She's a real desert rat.
Well, we sure want you to keep on writing because you are such a great writer. We can hardly wait again. We're going to have to wait probably close to another year before we see that next book. But, Joe, thank you so much for being here. It really has been terrific to have you my guest again today.
It's always fun for me. Thank you, Jacqueline.
Okay, Joe. Bye now.